My name is Mike Oshiki, and I'm one of the new team members here at Riverside Regional Medical Center. I'm also what's called in Japanese a sansei, the third generation of Japanese Americans to live in the United States. My grandfather, Seiji Oshiki, immigrated to America from Japan around the turn of the last century. He was Issei, or the first generation of Japanese Americans to live in this country. My father, Kazuo Oshiki, was Nisei, the second generation to live here, and the first generation to be an American citizen by birth. My father's example to me is an amazing one. He was a freshman in college when Pearl Harbor was bombed on December 7, 1941. The very next day, he tried to enlist in the Army after his country, the land where he was born and to whom he was a citizen, was attacked by the Japanese. But he was denied entry into the military because our country considered him to be an enemy alien, despite the fact that he was born a U.S. citizen and had never even been to Japan. Shortly thereafter, in early 1942, my dad and the rest of the family were incarcerated solely on the basis of their race and sent to an internment camp along with over 120,000 other Japanese Americans. Despite that injustice, in 1943, my father and my uncle answered the call for Japanese American volunteers to join the Army. My uncle went on to serve with the famed all-Japanese American 442nd Regimental Combat Team and fought in Europe. But as a college student, my father was selected for training as a Japanese linguist in a special military intelligence unit. The irony was that while my father was born of Japanese parents and learned the language as a child, he actually spoke very little Japanese by the time he was in college. But the test for the program was half English and half Japanese, and as an English major, Dad aced the English portion, even though he scored only minimally on the Japanese, but he exceeded the 50th percentile and got into the program. Dad went on to fight in the Philippines and Okinawa and spent time in Japan at the end of the war. Once back in the States, my father went back to school, earning his bachelor's and master's degrees, and eventually becoming the chief of staff to a member of Congress. But Dad was always bothered by the fact that American courts had consistently opined that the internment of Japanese Americans was justified, and he became a plaintiff in the class action lawsuit that eventually resulted in a formal apology by President Reagan to those who had been forced into the camps. Following that victory, Dad went on to be a member of the board of directors for the foundation that built the Japanese American National Memorial in Washington, D.C. My father was an inspiring example of selfless service and had a passionate commitment to treating everyone, regardless of their background, with dignity and respect. And even though he's no longer with us, there's not a day that goes by where I don't reflect on the values that he instilled in me and on the opportunities we have because of the sacrifices he and other Asian Americans made.